Hello everybody, LA Little here, and this is today's daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets. We do it every day from a neoclassical perspective, asking ourselves what happened today. What does that tell us about the coming ones? I do a show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel LA Little. Subscribe anytime content is pushed, you'll be notified. As far as what happened in these markets, it was a a blast back the other way. Last night, we had the big move down. Tonight, it's right back the other way. And it was all, well, it wasn't all, but it was a large part of it was technology. Technology was leading the charge. We had a pretty good push, 1% elsewhere. At Russell was wrong. Russell was up quite a bit more. Russell was up about 1.2 or so. NDX though 1.63, 1.47 on the broader composite. Dow was lagging the field. Gold, silver, all of that, slightly down, nothing big. Dollar reversed today and actually did a 2-bar reversal. Bonds held on to some pretty good gains. Where was it and why was it? Well, it was Greece and it was Europe. Our market started higher. Europe had already reversed and started working higher this morning. And not so much reversed, they actually started about even and started working higher. And by the time we got going, they were pushing us up. And then about mid-morning, we had a story come across about Greece. About an hour before that story hit, markets took off. And they never looked back, and it was up all day long. If you look at this particular chart, remember last night we had talked about the fact that this was ready to bounce, right? If you remember, here was the lows last night, and they came into this bar. That was the one we were looking at. So we were coming into this bar. We had volume on that bar. We had no volume on the push down. That was an indication that we'd get some sort of a bounce. Of course, we didn't know it would be a moonshot, but it is. And what does that do? It puts you back into this retest regenerate zone. It looks to me like it's going to go after the top of it now. So the CACs, the strongest in Europe. DAX didn't do too bad, but not nearly as strong. Inside bar doesn't tell you much other than the fact that the CACs is going higher. And if we look over on the FTSE, it was a full takeaway bar, just like on the CACs. So Europe trades higher, in particular off of news that Greek debt problem is somehow going to go away again. And that is what juices these markets today. Let's look at our markets. Let's look at the domestic issues. See what they look like. Now, all of them, the Dow was the weakest. Dow was an inside day, didn't really do anything. But if you go anywhere else, it was takeaway bars. Not quite a full one, almost on the S&P 500. And we're talking large bars. I mean, these are 1.5% moves between the two, between this and the NDX and NASDAQ. A little less volume, but back the other way. Now, this one did get over the high and back under it, so you could call that a failure, but I don't think that's going to matter because you don't look at these things in isolation. You look at them as a whole. You got volume escalation here on the NASDAQ. The broad NASDAQ wants to go test that high. And remember, the all-time highs are not that far above. They're just a bit farther up. And the real juice was in the NDX. That one just blows away, does a full takeaway, and it wants to go after that high. Now, and when I say they're high volume, I'm talking about the weeklies. If I look at the weekly, all the volume was on that weekly, and that's where it's going. So it's 45.62.33, 45.51 today. It will hit it most likely tomorrow, and then we'll see. Do they want to pay up at the highs? Looking at the Russell was up about let's see what it was, 1.26%. Takeaway bar as well. Back up into the swing point lows, and just like we saw on the CACs, the Russell now is into them and is going to try to get to the top of them. So, when I look here at the Russell, that one looks to me like it's going to try to get up into those highs. And all of that fits together with the NASDAQ, the NDX. So I would expect at least tomorrow some continuation. Of course, the risk here is that the news turns sour in Europe and we get a bunch of news that they aren't going to be able to solve the problems and the debt issues are still there. And then all of a sudden, you know, we're back the other way. Of course, that's the risk in news-driven markets, but you know, you just have to be aware of what that risk is. Keep going here. Let's look at the OX markets because the story here, of course, was the dollar. We got a 2-bar reversal here. So the dollar is going to try to come back in. At high yesterday's 25.59. Today we close it at 25.57. So we're back underneath it, 2 pennies. Going to try to pull back a little bit. Now I suspect that's simply going to set up some sort of an ABCD structure to the top side. It is a range trade. It did get over this and back under it. So, you know, I guess, and that, you know, this is what we were talking about in the S&P yesterday. S&P didn't hold under it. This high over here is 25.54. You close it at 25.57. So it's really 2 bars over it. So to me, that kind of qualifies it. I always want to see 2 bars if I can. You know, the bar that breaks it and then the bar that holds it. And so that tells me that more than likely we've got some sort of a range trade taking place finally. If we look elsewhere, it also looks to be the case on the euro. The euro goes up, comes down, gets under, back over. It came into the big bar, 2-bar reversal here as well. That should trade sideways to up tomorrow, just as the dollar should trade sideways to down. Looking at the bonds continue to push. They had, you know, pretty hard sell-off, tough bottoming process. Now they get a decent push up. Bonds are going to come back in for the bearish retest regen. That's here on the daily chart, and so they're coming into it almost right now. Actually, let's see what that number is. That's where all the volume is, by the way. That's 122.97, and we closed it at 122.74, got to 86. I would expect, just like the markets are going to try to reach up there and test those highs on the NASDAQ, on the NDX, well, this one's going to try to reach back up in there and test into that weekly. And on the weekly, it looks like it's already doing it, 122.87. Missed it by a penny. Also going to test into it here on the weekly. And yeah, that's the lowest, 187. So that's the bond. So when I look at all that together, right, doesn't look bad at all. Looks like a little bit more continuation. The hard thing about doing anything with this tomorrow, of course, is that you've already made a big push down and a big push back up. That makes it harder to keep going up. But go up, it looks like it's going to try, because if we look over at the sectors, right, over here, you've actually got some good moves as well. SOX just goes dynamite today, blows away all the tops, heads right back up and sets new highs. If I look down the list here, you had a bunch of takeaways. Even the IYT was almost a takeaway. But the XLK, the XLF, all of these doing takeaway bars just like the indexes. Even your safety XLP, the XLV, the XLU. I mean, go down the list. All of them, takeaway bars, back the other way. That does suggest to me that we're going to see some continuation probably tomorrow, if not the day after as well. Okay, and I think that pretty much does that. Let's take a quick look here at a viewer question and see what they're trying to do. Okay, as we come back here, we're going to take the viewer question. It has to do with moo. I actually did a video on this a couple days ago. Looks like back on Thursday of last week. Picks and shovels. Do you want to be in the DBA or the moo? And I pretty much concluded you want to be selling the picks and shovels, not using them. That's always been true throughout history most of the time, and that's also true here. So let's take a look at moo and see what it looks like. So Dave says, you know, could I have a look at ETF Moo on the weekly? It has broken over a long base, has come back to close to testing the breakout. So in other words, it did a retrace to come back. Let's look at the weekly first then. Okay, so the retrace is going to be in, right? A retest, regenerate is always going to be your prior swing point high. So that high was, let's see what the number was, 56.32. This came back to 56.82, so missed it by almost 1%. So kind of getting there, but not quite. That's the first thing, right? The question Dave asked is it time to make the buy? He's hesitant because the overall market. Well, after today, the overall market looks pretty good, right? Let's start with the daily. So the daily, you had all the volume here, right? Nice big spike up. So that low, well, you can see why it didn't get back there. I mean, on the daily chart, it's coming up against that low. That's the buy actually right there. And so it gave an opportunity yesterday and another one this morning. So I think you're just a little late on pulling the trigger now, though. So now, you know, you really want to see it come back. Again, these are the two bars. That intersection of those two bars on the way back up. Well, actually, I think I'm looking at this wrong. Let's do this again. No, that's right. Okay. So the top has the less volume. So the intersection of those two bars, which is where it got to today, 57.43, that low is 57.45. That's where it's going to be hard to get over. So I would think by tomorrow you're going to get a pretty good indication. If it does get over, then of course it's going to test the top of that big bar. But at this point, you're halfway back up into this little zone up here, right? Because there's really a zone here, and it's got two sections. So tomorrow, you know, if it falls back, of course, you want to wait until it comes back again to this low. If it goes back up, right, you really don't want to be buying it here, nor do you want to buy it up there. So you're kind of stuck waiting right now, is the way it looks to me. Let's go back. Let's look at a monthly. So the monthly breakout is here. So 56.55. Let's go back to the weekly. 56.55. This number is 56.32. And one more time to the daily. This low is 56.39. Yeah, I personally would. I'd try to be patient and see if I can get it somewhere in here. And it's just really where that bottom of that bar was, right? That's where I'd be trying to get it. So that's the way it looks. You got support underneath you with the gap. So you don't have to give it much room. So anything back into this area, you know, is a pretty good place to take your shot at this particular point in time. I actually had another question. It's kind of embarrassing, but I have lost the symbol, and I'm gonna do it from memory. If I get it wrong, then hopefully you will just simply ask me to do it again. So it's Tableau software, I believe, is what was being asked for. This is a very strong stock. It's one I've looked at myself, wanted to get in, didn't get in, and now wish I had. Earnings, big pop up, you know, breaks higher. And this thing's just been climbing ever since. And that's even with sell-offs in the market. So you can see the strength in this issue. Ever since it's come public, you know, this thing has been just working higher. I really like the way the chart looks. It broke over the high here. It's gonna probably be short on the volume at the end of the month, it looks like. 27th, yeah, it probably will be. So that high's got 31 million. It's doing, yeah, it will be 23 million. So it will be a suspect breakout. And what that says is that more than likely on this time frame, it will come back in and give you another shot. I don't know what's happening with my thing here. My mouse is being way sensitive somehow, and is like doing his own thing. I'm gonna have to get another mouse, it looks like. I can't even get rid of them. So anyway, what I'm trying to do is draw a line across there, and I can't seem to do it anymore. So let's leave it there. So that to me is where you would be coming back to. You got volume right there. You got volume over here. That would be the ideal spot. Let's get a price point on that. It is 102.37 back to 101.30, so somewhere between 101 and 102. If that's not the stock you're interested in, please ask me again. I'll do it tomorrow. But I believe, if I remember right, that was the stock. The only reason I think that is because I remember thinking to myself, oh yeah, that's the one I've been looking at. So let's leave it at that. As far as tomorrow, I kind of gave that away already. Looks to me like we're going to try to work higher tomorrow, but this is a news-driven market right now. Any piece of news, negative or positive, that comes out of Europe is going to move stocks. We saw it today. We'll see it again tomorrow if it happens again. And believe me, you're going to get that kind of news jostling, if you will, back and forth in front of a known time frame, right? And that known time frame is basically next week. The Greeks got to get it done, and the Europeans do too, and there's just not a lot of room. So somebody's going to have to blink, somebody's going to have to do something. Maybe they're both going to blink a little bit. But you know how it always is, folks. End of the world never comes. Can kicking is the way it works, and I suspect that's exactly what we'll see again. Thanks for joining me. Have a great night. Tell a friend. Tell two. Share this with your friends. There's a button on YouTube. If we pop over here to, let me go here to TATV. It's pretty easy to share. You just pop in there. Let me get this over so I can get to it. Right. Once we get there, and you go to YouTube and you're watching some of these videos, like there was a Michael Kors video this morning, and I'm not going to listen to myself, but once you get in here, there's ways to share this fairly easily. The share button is here. You got all these various ways to share it: Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Share it, right? It just takes a couple minutes max, probably 30 seconds. Tell your friends about me if you think that your friends might have some interest, and if they don't, well, they can ignore it. It's not a big deal. But the organic growth, that's the way it works nowadays, and if you can help me, I certainly will keep trying to help you. Thanks for joining me. Have yourself a great night. I'll see you next time. Good night, folks.